I have a new girlfriend. I'm going to live here with her, so I'm divorcing you. You should go back to your parents. I stared at him, unable to process his words. What are you talking about? I don't need you anymore, Matthew said with a casual shrug. If you want, I can leave you with my parents. You can either be their breadwinner or their housekeeper. Your choice. His words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay composed. Noah, do you understand? He continued. My parents and I, well, we laugh at you, but honestly, it's better this way, isn't it? A bitter smile formed on my lips. Then I guess you all should leave. My name is Noah. I'm 32 years old and an office worker. My entire life has revolved around my job. After graduating from college, I joined a major company, dedicating the last decade to climbing the corporate ladder. My efforts paid off. I became a department manager at a young age. At work, I was surrounded by ambitious colleagues and had a boss who always offered valuable advice. Professionally, I was fulfilled, but my personal life? That was a different story. I had only dated once, back in college. Since starting work, relationships had taken a back seat. Concerned about my lack of romance, a friend invited me to a dinner party. That's where I met Matthew. He had a warm smile, a friendly demeanor, and a way of making people feel at ease. Since we were the same age, conversation flowed effortlessly. We exchanged contact information, and soon, we were meeting up one-on-one. Before long, Matthew confessed his feelings, and we started dating. Our relationship felt easy, natural. When he proposed, I was overjoyed. I had found someone I loved, and we were building a future together. After our engagement, I visited his parents. They greeted me with open arms. Noah, what a pleasure. I can't believe our son managed to find such a wonderful woman. I'm proud of him for bringing someone like you home, his father added. Mom, Dad, stop embarrassing me, Matthew chuckled. His parents laughed, and I found myself smiling along. They were warm, welcoming, just like him. Noah works at a major company, right? She does, Matthew confirmed. That's impressive. A hard-working woman is admirable, his mother said. Will you quit after marriage? No, I replied firmly. I plan to keep working. Ah, that's even better, she said approvingly. I felt relieved. Many of my friends had been pressured by their in-laws to leave their jobs after marriage, but Matthew's parents seemed progressive. It reassured me. After our wedding, Matthew moved into my apartment, and our life as newlyweds began. I was truly happy, excited for our future together. 6 months into our marriage, Matthew approached me with a serious expression. I wanted to talk to you about something, he said hesitantly. What is it? I'd like us to move in with my parents. I blinked. You mean, live together? Yeah, they're getting older, and I'm starting to worry about them. I could understand his concerns. My own parents were around the same age, but my brother and his wife lived with them, so they were well taken care of. Matthew, on the other hand, was an only child. His worry made sense. But do they have enough space for us? I asked. I remember every room in their house being occupied. That's the thing, he said. I was thinking we could renovate, turn it into a 2-family home. A renovation? Yeah, it'll be much cheaper than buying a new house, and we'll have our own private space. What do you think? I considered it. His parents had been nothing but kind to me. Living separately within the same house didn't seem like a bad idea. All right, I agreed. Really? Thank you. My parents are going to be so happy. His excitement was contagious, and when we told his parents, they were overjoyed. Seeing them so grateful made me feel like we were making the right choice. Soon, Matthew and I began discussing the renovation. The estimated cost was around $100,000, not a small amount, but a reasonable investment. Then, out of nowhere, Matthew dropped a bombshell. Actually, I have a favor to ask, he said hesitantly. What is it? Could you cover the renovation costs? I frowned. Wait, the full amount? Why? He looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Because, we're in debt. I was stunned. Not once, during our courtship or marriage, had my husband or his parents mentioned anything about being in debt. Shaken, I managed to ask, how much do they owe? Matthew hesitated before finally admitting, about $150,000. What? I had expected a few thousand, maybe even tens of thousands, but $150,000? The sheer amount made me raise my voice in shock. It wasn't that bad at first, Matthew explained, rubbing the back of his neck, but it kept growing. Even when I tried to help, I couldn't make a dent in it. My parents are living on a pension, and I can't support them the way I'd like. The debt is only getting worse. I struggled to process what I was hearing. This was a massive financial burden, and I had no idea my in-laws were in this situation. Noah, Matthew said, his tone pleading, I need your help. Can you pay off my parents' debt? They can't handle it anymore. And honestly, I don't make enough either. I stared at him. Then isn't it unrealistic to renovate the house and move in together? No, that's still important. He insisted. We should go ahead as planned. I felt my chest tighten. You're asking me to cover both the remodeling and your parents' debt. That's nearly $250,000. I know it's a lot, he admitted, reaching for my hand, but I love you, Noah, and I love my parents. I want to take care of all of you. I'm sorry for being greedy, but if you really love me, you'll help me. I promise, I'll pay you back little by little. I was torn. My husband and in-laws had no one else to rely on but me, and I believed Matthew truly loved me. I was blinded by that love, by my desire to support him and his family. Okay, I said at last, I'll do it. Relief flooded Matthew's face. Thank you so much. He grasped my hand tightly, gratitude pouring from his voice. He wasted no time sharing the news with his parents, who soon visited to express their thanks. My mother-in-law even shed tears. We can never repay your kindness, Noah. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I'll do my best from now on, I told myself. With that, I officially took on my in-laws' debt. While I had some savings, I was hesitant to deplete them all at once. Instead, I paid $30,000 upfront and planned to cover the rest in installments. When we gathered to discuss repayment, my in-laws reassured me, do whatever works best for you. Matthew suggested, why don't you transfer the money directly to the debt repayment account? My parents aren't good with money, and it'd be safer that way. My in-laws nodded eagerly. It made sense, it would be simpler to handle the payments myself. So, I agreed. Once the matter was settled, my in-laws looked visibly relieved. Now we don't have to dread the debt collectors every month, my father-in-law sighed. Dad, Mom, make sure you properly thank Noah, Matthew said. We can't thank you enough. My mother-in-law clasped my hands. I'm so glad you married into this family. Her words sent an uneasy shiver down my spine. For the first time, I felt like they saw me as nothing more than a source of money. Still, I pushed the thought aside. I wanted to support my beloved husband's family. With that in mind, I started making payments. At the same time, we completed the home renovations and moved into our newly expanded house. My in-laws were delighted, and Matthew's eyes lit up with excitement. Even I found joy in the remodeled kitchen and the shorter commute to work. If I have more free time, I can even start studying again, I thought. But as time passed, something began to bother me. Matthew wasn't helping me pay off the debt, at all. When he first told me about it, he had promised to contribute, yet, he made no effort to put any money toward the payments. One day, I confronted him. You said you'd help pay off the debt, but I haven't seen you put in a single dollar. Why? He sighed. My salary isn't enough. How much do you even make? I pressed. Let me see your pay stubs. But he refused. He wouldn't tell me his income, wouldn't show me any proof, and yet, the payments still had to be made. For a year, I worked relentlessly, putting every spare dollar toward the debt. Then, one day, my in-laws casually asked, so, how much do you have left to pay? If it's been a year, you probably haven't covered much, right? My father-in-law mused. Yeah, my mother-in-law chimed in. At most, maybe $100,000? I shook my head. So far, I've paid about $30,000. That leaves roughly $90,000 left. Their eyes widened in shock. You've paid that much already? My father-in-law gasped. At this rate, you'll be done in 3 years, my mother-in-law exclaimed. I smiled faintly. If I keep working hard, I can finish it. Tears of joy welled in their eyes. Thank you, Noah. Seeing their gratitude made my sacrifices feel worth it. But just a few days later, everything changed. That evening, I had planned to work late. I told Matthew I'd be home late, but unexpectedly, we finished early. Happy at the thought of surprising him, I rushed home, eager to make dinner. When I stepped inside, I noticed my in-laws' shoes at the door. They must be visiting, I thought. As I approached the living room, I heard voices, my in-laws and Matthew, deep in conversation. You really made the right choice marrying that woman, didn't you, Matthew? My father-in-law chuckled. You sure did, my mother-in-law agreed. I can't believe you landed a woman with that much money. When I heard she worked for a big company, I froze, my heart pounded. I wasn't their family. I was their investment. I had been cautious from the start, yet he seduced me. You should be more grateful, Matthew had the audacity to say. I scoffed. Oh my, aren't you one of the people who created this debt? What, but I had the least to do with it, he replied, feigning innocence. Really? How much did you lose on horse racing? I shot back. Your gambling is a disaster. He waved a dismissive hand. I hit the jackpot once in a while. There were times we were actually in the black. I glared at him. How can you be in the black when you owe $150,000? But at this rate, we'll be out of debt soon, my father-in-law chimed in. Things are finally turning around. And she even paid for the house remodel, my mother-in-law added with a laugh. Matthew, you really landed a good wife. Yeah, Matthew said casually, once the debt is paid, I'll throw her away. Laughter erupted. My husband, his parents, they were all laughing. I stood frozen at the doorway, my body cold, my mind blank. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Then, slowly, I calmed myself. I forced my expression into something neutral, steadied my hands, and, with deliberate control, slammed the door shut behind me. I'm home, I called out. The three of them turned to greet me with wide, welcoming smiles. Oh, Noah, welcome back. Great job today, sweetheart. We were just talking about you, my father-in-law added. We'll head to our room now. Let's have dinner together again soon. That smile, that sickeningly gentle, fake smile. I had seen behind the mask, and it terrified me. Matthew, who always pretended to be a devoted husband, was nothing more than a con man, and I had spent all this time, all this effort, working to pay off their debts. Didn't you say you'd be working late today? Matthew asked, still grinning. Yeah, I replied as evenly as I could. I finished early, so I hurried home to cook dinner. He nodded, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I acted normal until dinner, never letting my mask slip, but later that night, as Matthew showered, I curled up in bed and sobbed silently. I cried until there were no tears left, and when I was done, something inside me shifted. Enough. The next morning, I started preparing for my escape. For the next 3 months, I pretended everything was fine. I smiled, I laughed, I played the role of the devoted wife, all while carefully setting my plan into motion. Then, one evening, I sat Matthew down. I have good news, I said, beaming. I've finished paying off the debt. His eyes widened. You, what? You said it would take 3 years, right? I continued smoothly, but I had more savings than I let on. I've been pulling from my salary and savings little by little. Since we were already under $100,000, I decided to just pay it off all at once. Matthew blinked in disbelief. Show me. I slid my bankbook across the table. His hands trembled as he flipped through it. It's real, he whispered. $90,000, paid in one lump sum. I watched as he tried to contain his excitement, but I could see it, he was itching to get away. He could barely sit still. Wow, Noah, thank you, he said, forcing a choked sob. My parents will be thrilled. His acting was pathetic. Right on cue, my in-laws arrived, their faces alight with glee. Noah, you're like a gift from heaven, my mother-in-law gushed. We're so lucky to have you. If I hadn't overheard them that night, I might have been touched by their words, but I knew better now. Their gratitude was nothing but greed disguised as affection. And I had one last act left to play. A few days later, Matthew sat me down again, his face unusually serious. Noah, he began, feigning regret. I'm sorry, but we have to break up. I tilted my head, pretending to be confused. What do you mean? I've met someone else. I'm going to live here with her, he said bluntly. So, we're divorcing. You'll be moving to my parents' house. For a moment, I almost laughed. I had expected this, but I hadn't expected him to be so bold about it. What do you mean, sending me to your parents' house? I asked, feigning innocence. Matthew sighed, growing irritated. You don't get it, do you? I don't need you anymore, but you can still be useful. You can stay with my parents, as a breadwinner or a housekeeper. Oh no, I murmured. Just then, the front door swung open, and my in-laws entered, smiling as if this was all perfectly normal. Did you tell her? My father-in-law asked. Yeah, I did. Oh, I wish I could have seen her face, my mother-in-law cackled. All right, that's that. You'll move into our place, my father-in-law said with finality. You can handle the chores. And of course, you'll pay rent. They all laughed again, as if I was some kind of joke. I exhaled slowly, then stood. Actually, I said, my voice calm and clear, you all need to leave. The laughter stopped. My in-laws blinked in confusion. What? Matthew scoffed. I smiled. Have you forgotten? I paid for the renovations. And the house title? It's in my name. The blood drained from their faces. You, what? My mother-in-law stammered. I crossed my arms. I legally own this house, which means I decide who stays and who goes. My father-in-law's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My mother-in-law looked faint. Matthew, however, wasn't ready to give up. But you paid off our debt, he snapped. You're the one losing money here. I tilted my head, considering. Yes, I did, but think of it this way, I just paid $150,000 to get rid of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, with the sweetest smile I could muster, I added, now pack your things, you're trespassing in my house. If we had no debt, we could at least afford a new place to live. That's true. Thank you for letting us stay in a nice house while you paid off our debts, my in-laws and husband said casually, as if it had all been my responsibility from the start. Hearing that, I decided it was time to reveal the truth. I folded my arms and smiled. Actually, I never paid off the remaining $90,000 of debt. A heavy silence filled the room. What? My husband shot up from his seat, his face pale. No, but we saw the money missing from your bank book. I shrugged. That was just a separate account I created to look like I was paying off the debt. In reality, the remaining $90,000 is still there. The collections just haven't hit yet because I've been making large payments consistently. I tilted my head, pretending to be thoughtful, but I think it's about time they do. So, from now on, you will be responsible for paying the rest. Their faces drained of color. My father-in-law swayed as if he might faint. My mother-in-law's lips quivered. Before they could even process that, I dropped another bombshell. Matthew, I said sweetly, you admitted to having an affair. That means you'll have to pay alimony, and I'll also be charging your affair partner. Matthew panicked, his face twisted in sheer horror. No, 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 she only dated me because I had a house and money, he wailed. If I have to pay alimony, she'll dump me. I met his gaze with an icy stare. I don't care. Noah, please, he begged, his voice desperate, don't do this. His parents quickly followed suit. Noah, we're sorry, my mother-in-law cried, please don't abandon us. My father-in-law clasped his hands together as if praying, we were wrong, please, don't leave. Pathetic. The same people who had laughed at my expense were now groveling, but their apologies weren't real, they were just afraid of losing their meal ticket. I have nothing to do with you people anymore, I said firmly, and one more thing, I've already put this house on the market. They gasped in unison. Oh, I added casually, you'll also be paying back the $60,000 I covered for you, through my lawyer. A heavy silence filled the room as my in-laws sat frozen, completely stunned. After that, I officially filed for divorce and demanded alimony from both my ex-husband and his affair partner. I also sued my former in-laws to recover the $60,000 I had paid for them. The house sold quickly for around $200,000. Its great location attracted a buyer almost immediately. After covering the remaining debt and renovation costs, I still walked away with a $40,000 profit. On top of that, the alimony and lawsuit settlements left me with even more financial security. In the end, I was the biggest winner. As for my ex-husband and his parents, they were drowning in debt once again, and now, they had no home to fall back on. Honestly, I think they deserved every bit of it. They used me, manipulated me, and treated me like a fool, but life has a way of making people face the consequences of their actions. This experience taught me a valuable lesson. I need to be very careful about the people I trust. But from now on, I'll continue saving, investing, and building my wealth. I'll live a comfortable, luxurious life, creating happy memories with people I can truly trust.